WVLT Sports and VolQuest.com. It's the Extra Point with Rick Russo and Brent Hubbs.
Hi, everybody, and welcome once again into the Extra Point Show. Rick Russo alongside Brent Hubbs of VolQuest.com on this day after Tennessee's 63-6 win over the Akron Zips. And Brent, there was never going to be any doubt that Tennessee was going to get this win, but what the Vols wanted to do going into this thing was fix some problems, maybe correct some of the mistakes that they may have made from the Pitt game, and I think they moved in that direction, especially on the offensive side.
Yeah, I think when you got your checklist, you got some things going that you wanted offensively, and you got Hendon Hooker going. The other part of that checklist is you didn't want to get anybody hurt, and you didn't survive that part of the checklist. So that's going to be the storyline this week. But in terms of what you got done on the field, you got your offense. You got a little bit of offensive rhythm going. You took care of business. You were mature. You got a bunch of young guys on the field. Some of them made plays, which will make for some interesting decisions this week. The Joshua Josephs and some of those young defensive players give you enough to say, hey, you know what? 5 to 10 snaps in SEC play, they can handle that.
Right.
Punt return. Did Squirrel White give you enough that says, hey, I'm comfortable there. We want that. We want him back there because he can give a playmaker. So you got a chance to display and put on display some of your younger players to build depth, but also to kind of make some critical decisions now if you go into SEC play. Who can help us? Who can't? Who do we trust? Who do we not? Who do we think is physically and mentally ready for what's coming next week based on what we saw last night?
Squirrel White certainly made a very nice catch early in the game, and we'll get to that in our defining moments. But it didn't take long for Tennessee after the game last night to start turning the attention towards Florida. In fact, let's go ahead and put it up on the screen. The Vols have already come out and said next Saturday's game against Florida will be checker kneeling. So, and there you go. That was tweeted out this morning by UT Athletics and Tennessee football. Always a fun time. We'll see if it helps Tennessee next week against the Gators.
Well, we'll see about that. But I'll say this, too. Hats off to the Tennessee fan base and to the crowd that showed up last night.
No doubt.
That was a terrific crowd. And hats off to Josh Heupel for acknowledging that immediately in his post-game press conference. This fan base is excited about where this program is. They're excited about the product that Josh Heupel is putting out there. They like the experience they're getting in Neyland Stadium. I think the ticket situation with the electronic tickets is getting better. I think it was better this week than it was against Ball State. I think part of that's because fans are comfortable. I think they had more scanners. They're making adjustments as you go to make the experience a better experience. And again, this is a town that's looking for a winner. Josh Heupel is showing that they're going to be exciting to watch. This town's going to be pretty fired up this week. It'll be a wild week getting ready for the Florida Gators.
Really looking forward to that, and you'll be able to see that game on WVLT 3:30 CBS next Saturday. All right, let's get those stats back on the screen and talk about the numbers from yesterday's game. Tennessee made a concerted effort to run the football 45 times, and they did go over 200 yards, but what stands out to me, they held Akron, the Zips, to just 35 yards rushing on the day.
Yeah, Akron just finally decided, hey, we can't run it.
And they threw the ball a lot,
which is what they needed to do because Tennessee was just not going to let them
run
the football. I was a little surprised DJ Irons, the quarterback for Akron, didn't try to run it a little bit more.
Sure.
Maybe that was because he was still managing through the injury he had last week against Michigan State. But I was surprised. I kind of thought, and I think Tennessee thought he might use his legs a little more, and Tennessee was probably hoping that was going to be the case because Anthony Richardson from Florida is coming in next week, and he can run the football out of the zone read. But Tennessee was just teeing off on the running backs. And again, Akron couldn't get sideline to sideline because of Tennessee's speed, and Tennessee got back into what we saw against Pittsburgh, and that is that attacking mode up front. There was nothing vanilla about what they did. They attacked up front. They were aggressive and physical. That's 2 weeks in a row for this defense, and that's a very positive sign right now.
Indeed. As we turn the page now on the stats from Tennessee's win over the Akron Zips, that stands out to me right at the top. They held them to 1 for 13 on third down conversions. The Tennessee defense very stout in that first half.
Yeah, they were, and they did what they needed to do. They were better. They were the better football team. They were more physical. They were faster. They were more talented. Don't let a team hang around. Okay, get it done. And defensively, Akron had one drive really where they missed a field goal, and that was essentially it in the first half that they had the opportunities with. Other than that, I mean, you're going to nitpick and clean up some things. They've got to handle running backs out of the backfield in the passing game better because Billy Napier will try to exploit that next week because Tennessee gave up, I think, 11 completions to the tailbacks for Akron. Now, they didn't get many yards with it, but they did give up, some completions there. The middle of the field, again, at times is open because the linebackers vacated because of pressure there. So there's some things certainly to clean up. They didn't play as clean as they wanted to play from a penalty standpoint. Lots of stuff to continue to work on. But again, when you look at what happened in week 2 in college football, with teams not ready to play at home against inferior opponents, Tennessee never had any idea, never an inkling of letting Akron hang around,
right,
which is exactly what a mature football team is supposed to do.
Paxton Brooks didn't get a lot of work last night.
Good.
Tennessee 4 for 4 on 4th down conversions, 2 of them on the option toss there to Dylan Sampson for scores. That was interesting, I thought, in the first half.
Yeah, and Josh Heupel was he was aggressive. He was trying to send a message to his team.
And you figured he was going to be against
and wanted to show his team, hey, we're better. We're going to go play like we're better, and we're not going to punt the football. We're going to go do what we need to do and move the sticks. And so Tennessee, aggressive offensively, as you expect out of a Josh Heupel team, solid defensively, good win. What does it mean for next month? Again, all that doesn't matter. That was the opponent to play. You got yourself ready to play. You took care of your business. You turned the page at 10:05 this morning if you hadn't already turned the page.
That's right.
Because it's all about Florida now, and it's all about SEC play.
All right, let's look at the defining moments from Tennessee's win over them Zips.
The Extra Point Moment of the Game. Sponsored by your volunteer GMC dealers.
So, Brent, a little bit of a slow start for the Tennessee offense yesterday. They drive down the field, have to settle for a field goal, which is no good. But then they get going. Same thing for Hendon Hooker, and what got him going, this pass to Squirrel White.
Yeah, you look at Hendon Hooker's numbers prior to that. He was 3 of 7 for 32 yards. He had been high with the football a couple of times. Just looked like they seemed like they were off. I really like what Squirrel White did right there. He showed his speed right at the end of this route to be able to clear the corner, to almost get inside of him there to make that catch. Great concentration, 47-yard completion. That's one of the young guys, Rick, that you're sitting here this morning, if you're Josh Heupel and Alex Golesh, going, okay, we didn't put him on the field against Pittsburgh because we went with that narrow rotation of receivers. How much do we do stuff with him? I'm not saying he plays 40 snaps a game, but do we get him in a handful of snaps to use his speed there? Do we get him in the punt return game? Squirrel White, given the opportunity,
he's a dynamic player.
Took advantage of that opportunity. That's a play now. Hendon Hooker's going to have more trust in Squirrel White because he went and made a play in the football game for him. And clearly for Hendon Hooker, he got going there because after that play, he went 10 for 10 because that was number 11.
Yeah.
Hendon Hooker finished that game 11 for 11 for 238 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
And Squirrel White got it going.
I'm going to do my math right here. As we go to our next defining moment. 5 plus 11 equals 6 a couple times last night.
Yeah.
So that was a great combination with these two guys, 57-yarder and then a 48-yarder right here.
And again, I've said this, and this is a personal bias, and I'll be the first to admit it. I think Jalen Hyatt is the best story on this football team. Where he was in October and November a year ago, when he walked through the complex, it was a hood on, it was his head down, he had nothing to say, he had no smile, he was a very disgruntled, unhappy, not enjoying life, not enjoying playing football. And for him to make the commitment he made in January to stay here, when we all live in the world of the transfer portal, we all leave, for him to stay here, take the advice of Velus Jones, and really go to work on his craft and to make his craft better. That's the result of it last night.
Brent, 2 weeks in a row now, Tennessee has had a receiver go over 150 yards. Cedric Tillman last week, and then Hyatt yesterday with 166 yards.
And again, I'm going to harp on this word a lot this morning. It's about trust. In the Pittsburgh game, it was real clear where Alex Golesh and Hendon Hooker were going with football, right? They were going to Cedric Tillman because that's the trust factor. But then you look at the number of catches that Jalen Hyatt got in that game. Trust building.
Yeah.
Last night, more trust. Hendon Hooker's getting very comfortable with Jalen Hyatt. Jalen Hyatt's playing with a ton of confidence right now. That slot position in this offense can be extremely productive. It was the last 2 weeks in different ways. Last week it was the out possession type deal. This week it's go get it vertical down the field. A lot of diversity out of Jalen Hyatt. A lot of really good plays out of number 11 last night.
You love to see that progress being made, and who knows, Jalen Hyatt will be counted on a lot more if Cedric Tillman isn't able to come back in a hurry for the Big Orange. And that's defining moment number 3, this play where he gets hurt. Brett, I thought the pass was a little tall, which left him vulnerable down low. That's where the defensive back went, and he was on the ground.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens. I think Cedric Tillman spent the second half in the locker room getting early treatment and trying to get started and get going. We'll see exactly where everything's at with him.
He walked off under his own power, but he was hobbling.
He was, and he had gotten banged up a little bit on the option play earlier in the game on
Correct.
a touchdown. So bruised and battered, and that's not what you wanted to have happen. But the good news is he walked out. He told his teammates, yeah, hey, I'm good. I don't know what that really means in the moment, so I don't think you get caught up in whatever he told somebody on the sideline. The good news there is he was putting a good bit of weight on his ankle as he walked off. I think the ankle's probably the issue more than the knee. They just call it a lower body injury, and we'll see. Lots of round-the-clock treatment for Cedric Tillman. You know how much he wants to play against Florida. We'll see how the ankle reacts over the course of the next couple of days. We don't expect Josh Heupel to offer up a lot of updates because he doesn't offer up a lot of injury news. We'll see. He was optimistic, hopeful that he would be back, but we'll just see how his body reacts this week.
Yeah, we hope.
Tough play. Again, when you look at this game, you're a 50-point favorite. You're not going to lose. What you don't want to have happen is the injury bug jump up. And last night, Cedric Tillman leaves the game. Jabari Small, after 2 carries, leaves the game, doesn't return. And Dylan Sampson hurts his ankle in the third quarter. Really tough night for Tennessee on the offensive side of the field from an injury standpoint.
Yeah, in a game like that, you want everybody to stay healthy, especially with what's looming in the Florida Gators. All right, defining moment number 4. The clock's hit 0, and Tennessee gets the win and improves to 3-0, Brett.
Yeah, they did. And again, 3-0 for the first time since 2016. But everything right then in that moment for that team is about Florida.
That's right.
And I know Josh Heupel said last night, hey, we're going to celebrate the win, and you don't take winning for granted. You don't. But every kid who pulled up their phone, they had a message, and it was all about Florida. And Tennessee's full attention could go to Florida. Josh Heupel was a bit worried this week, okay? He was a bit worried because nobody was asking Akron questions. There was no talk about Akron. It was about reviewing
but
the
when you do ask those questions, he says it's about us.
I know. But nobody was talking about this week. All the discussion was about how you beat Pitt.
Sure.
You know, that's what you talked about on Monday and Tuesday. And then at the end of the week, it was all about starting to move towards Florida and what you want to accomplish to get ready for SEC play. It wasn't anything specific about Akron. And as a coach, you worry about everything. And you worry about your kids being focused and locked in, particularly when you see what Appalachian State did at Texas A&M and Marshall at Notre Dame and Georgia Southern at Nebraska. So as a coach, you're naturally worried about things. Now you don't have to worry about it anymore. You got that one out of the way. This is all about what this fan base has been craving. This is about what your team wants. This is about the big boys and the SEC, big boy ball. Now you can truly focus on all of that, and that's all this week is about.
Saw some fans there already doing the chop.
Everybody's
at the end of the
ready.
Game, no doubt. All right, let's go back now and check out the call from the television side in our game in 60 seconds.
3rd down again for Tennessee with 5 on the timer. 3rd and 6, Hooker. This time he escapes the pocket and he's dangerous with his legs. A big chunk for the quarterback inside the Akron 30. Hendon Hooker on the first play of a new drive, lets it rip. Right sideline, caught near the 30. That's Squirrel White, the freshman out of Birmingham, Alabama. This is it for 48 yards.
Gotta love him fighting back.
And Tennessee will waste no time with this up-tempo offense. Open man for Hooker. On the money, Jalen Hyatt. Touchdown, Tennessee. They set up the double reverse and a little space for George. Ball is loose on top of the orange and white checkerboard in the end zone. And they will throw it on the final play of the 3rd quarter, and Milton will load it up and fire. Touchdown, Tennessee. Jackson keeps and waltzes in. First career touchdown for Taven Jackson, could be the first of many.
And Tennessee again wins 63-6. You talked about Hendon Hooker after the slow start really coming on, but how about Joe Milton now? He's looked good in his short time on the field so far this season to Ramel Keaton there, and he also had a touchdown pass to Walker Merrill.
I would tell you there's just a handful of quarterbacks, former current at all levels of football, including the National Football League, that can put their arm where Joe Milton's arm is right now. I'm telling you right now. I mean, that touchdown pass to Ramel Keaton was not a high arcing throw. It was on a rope. As Pat Ryan said last night on the Ball Network, you could have hung clothes on that thing.
Look at that.
I mean, it was a line, and it was.
Is that
dead.
Joe Namath or Joe Milton?
I'd say it was dead in stride to Ramel Keaton.
Yeah,
That's the play that a year ago Joe just couldn't make. I'll give Hendon Hooker a ton of credit too for his relationship with Joe Milton. I think he's helped Joe Milton understand how to prepare and calm down. I think Joe Milton has helped Hendon Hooker understand how to have fun and enjoy the game.
It's a really neat dynamic, isn't
It's
it?
a yin and a yang of two roommates who aren't worried about competing with each other. They're just worried about enjoying the college experience. They've both made each other better. And I think Joe Milton has proven to you that you feel comfortable if you have to play him. You don't want to have to play him because Hendon Hooker's your guy. But the growth Joe Milton has made from the last time we saw him at the end of the last year, that Ole Miss game, to where he's at right now, feels like a total different guy. He's just got a level of calmness about him out on the field that he didn't have a year ago.
Coach Heupel and Steph have got to be so excited about that dynamic, that relationship.
Well, that's what your culture,
Yeah.
that's what you want to have in your locker room. And it's guys pulling for each other, cheering for each other. And again, those two individuals, I think, have both made each other better in different ways.
No doubt. All right, folks. Throughout the next hour here, we would love for you to tweet at us using the hashtag #TheExtraPointShow. Yeah, we want to hear from you. Send us your comments and questions about the Akron game or what lies ahead, which immediately is the Florida Gators. We'll check the Extra Point Twitter feed and get those answers, or at least try to, during the course of the next hour. Well, that is one segment down, but plenty more to come, including our weekly look at Tennessee football recruiting. Stay with us here on the Extra Point Show. Brent Hubbs and Rick Russo here on the Extra Point Show. Glad you're here with us. Time to go inside the numbers. And again, Brent, after a slow start, Hendon Hooker got it going.
Yeah, I mean, you're a little bit worried about the start because that's 3 games in a row, and I'm not sure what's causing some of the high throws. But after that ball to Squirrel White, that was the one that got him going. Again, Hendon Hooker finishes 11 for 11, 266 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's after starting 3 for 7 for 32 yards. So got to have a better start. You got to try to figure out what that is. He didn't start well at Pittsburgh. He didn't start ready to get Ball State. But when he gets in a rhythm and it gets going, Tennessee's really dynamic and really explosive. He's playing well. I don't want to sound like he's not playing well.
He is.
But you want him a little better out of the start than what he's got. But again, when he gets that first big one and gets going, he really gets going as he did last night.
And speaking of the Tennessee offense, the ball's getting about 10 yards a pop.
Yeah. We talked last week about how bad first down was for Tennessee. They were 3rd and long.
Yeah.
They didn't have a bad down yesterday for the Volunteers. When you're averaging almost 10 yards a play, 9.6 is what Tennessee averaged, 676 yards on 70 snaps.
70 snaps.
That's the big-time offensive football. That's the Josh Heupel offense everybody always talks about.
You know, last year we talked and we harped on that second quarter. Tennessee's doing good in the second quarter this season.
That's exactly right. Last year it was just 109 points is what Tennessee scored in the second quarter for the entire season a year ago. This year, how about this number? 59 through 3 games.
Wow.
Now they're a second quarter team. You want your first quarter. Now we're going to be greedy, Rick. Let's get the first quarter a little bit better. But this is a second quarter football team right now. Point of emphasis the entire offseason. Don't lose your focus in the second quarter. They haven't lost it offensively or defensively. Again, 59 points, just 109 all of last year. They've already got 59 points in the second quarter this year.
All right, the final inside the number 20 has to do with the Vol defense doing a nice job last couple games.
Let's give the defense some
That's
love, right?
Give
Okay,
some
because
love.
we stood up here, we had a big goose egg up here after week 1,
That's
right?
right.
No sacks, only 2 tackles for loss. What's Tim Banks done the last 2 weeks when he added a little flavor into his vanilla defense against Pitt and against Akron? How about 20 tackles for loss in the last 2 games? Aggressive up front. Playing on the other side of the ball, Rodney Garner's guys, off the edge, bringing linebacker blitzes, interior guys playing with better angles. Tennessee much more productive. 20 tackles for loss, 2 football games. That's pretty good defense.
All right, Brent Hubbs inside the numbers. Stay with us, folks. When we come back, we're going to hear from our partner, Chris Lowe of ESPN.com, get his thoughts on Tennessee football. You're watching The Extra Point Show. Welcome back to The Extra Point Show, everybody. And as we do each week, it's time to check in with WVLT contributor Chris Lowe of ESPN.com and get his thoughts on Big Orange football.
Well, here it is, the game that Tennessee fans have been waiting on seemingly a decade, certainly since last year when Tennessee went belly up in the second half and was shut out against Florida. The Vols coming off just a demolition of Akron. Everybody thought that would happen, and that's what the Vols did. And very similar to what they did in week 1 against Ball State, taking care of business. But this is a game, let's not kid ourselves, this coming Saturday as the Gators come into Neyland Stadium, an environment that ought to be just off the charts good. They're a 3:30 game, and a Tennessee fan base that's hungry, a Tennessee fan base that can taste it. And you got to think this Tennessee football team is in a similar mode. It's a team that, let's be honest, I don't think any of us thought that Tennessee would be this far along in year 2 under Josh Heupel. The Vols have taken care of business. They've really beaten everybody that they should beat, I think with the exception of Purdue in the bowl game last year. But you're seeing a team now playing with a lot of confidence, almost a swagger, a team that expects to go out and beat teams badly. You've got a seasoned veteran quarterback in Hendon Hooker, who's playing so consistently as the centerpiece of that football team. Guys rally around him. You're seeing a defense that really stood up in that Pittsburgh win in overtime 2 weeks ago when they needed to stand up. These are all factors that you're going to need against an SEC rival like a Florida. Now, I've seen games, we all have seen games that follow Tennessee football in this series where Tennessee was the better team and did not win. Well, there's no doubt in my mind that Tennessee is the best team this Saturday. Can they get it done? Can they be the best team on the field Saturday? We all know the stat. 4-38 Tennessee is against Florida, Georgia, and Alabama since Philip Fulmer's final season. That's got to change because every coach that's ever coached at Tennessee, certainly the last 2 or 3 decades, are going to be measured by how they do against Alabama, Florida, and Georgia. If Tennessee's going to get Florida, this is the time to get them. This is the most gettable Florida team, first-year coach, and Billy Napier, a young but talented quarterback, and Anthony Richardson, who's been dynamite, at least in the opener. But he's turned the football over here lately. How does he fare in this environment on Saturday at Neyland Stadium? So it all adds up, certainly from the periphery anyway, it adds up that Tennessee has a chance to really sort of break that Florida curse. Can they get it done? We'll be waiting and watching Saturday at Neyland Stadium at 3:30. For WVLT Sports, I'm Chris Lowe.
Chris, as always, thanks for the terrific insight. And if you're not going to the game next week, you can watch it on WVLT, CBS 3:30. Looking forward to it, no doubt. Let's go back to the Twitter feed. And Brent, the question here, and again, thanks for writing in. Will special teams, punt protection, play a pivotal role in the Florida game? Is it a positive or a negative? The Vols certainly, it bit them against Pitt and more trouble against Akron.
Well, they got close to giving up a punt block against Akron. It's just the operation's got to be faster.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just got to get faster. They've got to protect some things better, but you got to get the operation going faster than what we've seen the last 2 weeks. I think that's the biggest key. And yeah, absolutely. Florida, who doesn't feel like they can score at ease, they're looking for an advantage here and there. I'm sure they'll be very aggressive and try to come after a punt. So Mike Heckler's group's going to have to be locked in and dialed in because special teams has played a pivotal role in this series through the years. It'll be a factor certainly on Saturday afternoon.
And that's one of those things, if they get a block or something like that, that can give a team a big boost on the road in the SEC.
No doubt. And you look at what it did at Pittsburgh. I mean, if the two Pittsburgh players don't knock each other out of bounds, that's a touchdown for Pittsburgh.
Yep.
We're talking about a whole different game in the second half. So that's something that will be a point of emphasis. Tennessee's got to clean that up, dial that in, and speed up their operation next week.
All right, stay with us, folks. When we come back, we're talking Tennessee football recruiting with our friends from VolQuest.com. You're watching the Extra Point Show. Don't go away.
More Extra Point is coming your way next. Sponsored by your East Tennessee GMC dealers.
Was there ever any doubt? Your player of the game, that guy, number 11, Jalen Hyatt, 5 for 5 in receptions, 166 yards along a 57, 55 yards after the catch, and 2 touchdowns. Jalen Hyatt, your Tennessee player of the game against the Zips. Neyland at night, well, it was pretty special against those Akron Zips, not just because of the win, but because Tennessee was celebrating the 50th anniversary of when the lights first came on at the iconic stadium. With a little trip through time, here's Alan Williams.
The scene was certainly electric 50 years ago when UT played its first home game for the first time ever under the lights.
That was 50 years ago. I know. I can't believe it. It seems like it was just 4 or 5 years ago.
Fullback Steve Chansey was an integral part of that UT team, So was Bud Ford.
They scheduled 2-game set, Coach Woodruff did, with Joe Paterno, who was the coach at the time. One of the games was to be played in Knoxville. That was played in December of 1971. In 72, it was anticipated that that game would be a night game. Well, at that time, Penn State did not have lights, and neither did Tennessee, so it was presumed it would be at some neutral site. Not sure what all transpired, but all I know is that some way Tennessee mangled around Coach Woodruff and his way, got an opportunity to put the lights in, and called Paterno and said, we can play in Knoxville at nighttime, because Paterno did not want to come here in September and play. He felt like it was going to be too warm.
The game wasn't televised, but it certainly didn't lack for excitement.
It was enhanced because of playing Penn State, and they were a power in those days. They used to call them the Beast of the East.
Conridge Holloway was at quarterback, Haskell Standback at running back, but it was Knoxville's Chansey that stole the show.
It was early on in the first quarter, and it was we were running an option play to the right side, and I had the key block on the defensive back. I got him pretty good, and Haskell was a terrific player, and he cut back and went all the way for a score on that one.
Steve, that was a special moment for you following that game.
This is one of my prized possessions, and I had a good game against Penn State that night, and there it is. Coach Battle presented that to me after the game, as he usually would do. He would give 1 or 2 game balls out, and I had a touchdown in that game, and was proud of what we had done.
The Vols went on to a 10-2 record. If it wasn't for a loss to Alabama, Tennessee could very well have been in the national championship hunt, finishing 9th. But it all started with that win over the Nittany Lions on that historic night under the lights that will never be forgotten.
We played in the Outback Bowl with Penn State several years later. And I asked him, I said, Coach Paterno, what about those 2 games in Knoxville that you played in 71 and 72? He just looked up and said, that Coach Woodruff, he sure snookered me on that.
I'm Alan Williams.
Love going into the Wayback Machine. Alan, thank you so much. That was a wonderful piece. Well, let's fast forward to 2022 and go back to the Twitter feed. It's about Jimmy Callaway. It's been said, I missed it, but is Callaway going to be punished for his actions in the game? He lost control yesterday in the second half.
He certainly did, and was thrown out of that game. That does not necessarily carry a suspension moving forward. We'll see what Josh Heupel has to say.
It's not like
about
targeting
it.
where you miss the next week.
Right, so we'll see what Josh Heupel has to say about it, and when he addresses it moving forward in terms of whether or not he does any kind of punishment on the field, in game action, or if it's all internal. Josh Heupel made it very clear he was disappointed in Jimmy Callaway's actions last night, and you just can't do that. I mean, you can't turn that into a boxing match out there. And Jimmy Callaway completely lost control, and we'll see what comes of it from there.
All right, stay with us, folks. One more segment to go. When we come back, a closer look at the Vols' next opponent, those Florida Gators. You're watching the Extra Point Show.
More Extra Point is coming your way next. Sponsored by your East Tennessee GMC dealers.
Man, we're looking forward to this one next week. The rankings may change. Vols went into this weekend 15, Florida 18. This is Florida last night, Brent, against the University of South Florida. They came over to Gainesville, and they really gave the Gators a game.
Yeah, they lined up to kick a field goal to tie it and send it into overtime. Turnover costly there, the pick six. Florida's defense was opportunistic. Florida's Anthony Richardson, their quarterback, threw a red zone interception that changed the dynamic of that game as well. Biggest thing with Florida that you've seen through 3 games is the inability to defend the run and to stop the run. We see the option. Tennessee showed that last night in their playbook. South Florida used that last night. South Florida cannot throw the ball very well. They only threw for 116 yards last night. So this is going to be, Tennessee's strength throwing the football against Florida's strength. Right. Can Tennessee find a way to run the football successfully? Because, again, that's been Florida's biggest weakness. And then when you look at the Florida offense, they go as Anthony Richardson goes. If Anthony Richardson's legs really get going, he plays with a lot more confidence. We saw that in the Utah game. When you take his legs away in the run game, he doesn't seem to play as well. Kentucky did a fabulous job of that in week 2, which is why they won the game. And last night, South Florida did a pretty decent job of that as well, limiting some of Anthony Richardson's runs. What did we say about Tennessee's defense a year ago? Matt Corral, running quarterbacks were kryptonite to Tim Banks. So what is Tim Banks' answer this offseason for running quarterbacks? We're going to get the first true test of what that looks like come Saturday afternoon inside Neyland Stadium.
And there's some of Tim Banks' defense doing its thing. But I wanted to talk a little bit about Hendon Hooker again. Hooker now with 37 career touchdown passes. He's moving up the charts all time for Tennessee. And he's also had, this is great, 1 touchdown pass in 15 straight games, 3 shy of the record 18 held by Heath Shuler. Again, he's going to have his work cut out for him next week against the Florida secondary that's given up only 116 yards per game.
Yeah, but for Tennessee to have a chance to win, Hendon Hooker has to extend that streak. He's got to play well.
Yeah.
He's got to throw touchdown passes. He's got to be effective in the passing game, get off to a good start. Turnovers will be a big factor in this game. The other thing that's going to happen, that needs to happen, we didn't talk about it today, Tennessee had over 100 yards in penalties. Got to clean it up. Tennessee cannot give themselves self-inflicted wounds. They don't need to help Florida out at all with a short field on turnovers or with penalties, putting them behind the sticks to where Florida's secondary can get super aggressive. That'll be another key stat to watch.
And that's after having 7 for 70 yards against Pitt the previous week.
Yeah, they've got to clean that up. And it's something that Josh Heupel's, his teams have not been a real penalty-prone team, but they are going to have to clean that up in a big game. And, of course, the biggest question everybody's got about this game right now on this Sunday morning is the health status of those offensive players. Where's Dylan Sampson? Where's Jabari Small? Most importantly, where's Hendon Hooker's biggest security blanket in the passing game, Cedric Tillman? What's his status? Not going to know until late in the week, but that's going to be a huge storyline going into this game.
But you feel better, I think, going into this game because of the way, as you mentioned, your defense is starting to play. 11 tackles for loss yesterday against the Zips.
Yeah, and identity, okay? You know what you are. You know who you are. How much do they continue to rotate guys up front? How much does Rodney Garner feel comfortable with some of those young players that we saw make some plays? Tim Banks will have some things in his lunch pail, so to speak, going into this game. The biggest thing is how do you got to make sure you play contain. You can't let Anthony Richardson get one of those 30, 40-yard runs and get him going and get him comfortable. Crowd could be a huge factor in this game. Florida's first road test, Anthony Richardson's first big road test as a starting quarterback. 100,000 fans, over 100,000 fans. They should be rocking at 3:30 in the afternoon. Crowd could be a real factor in this game for Tennessee in a good way.
That's a great point because they have not played away from Ben Hill Griffin Stadium yet this season.
They have not. So how does Billy Napier's communications work? It's different with a new coach. All of those things can factor in.
Sure.
That's something to keep an eye on.
Guys, let's go ahead and put the graphic on the screen for the game time for next week, and there it is. Florida at Tennessee, 3:30 on WVLT and CBS. Folks, we're going to have a pregame show like no other. We'll start getting cranked up at 10 a.m. and we'll go till after 1 o'clock and the Vol Walk, which should be rocking next week down Peyton Manning Pass.
No question. This Tennessee fan base is hungry for this game. They've been looking for a game like this for a long time. Here's Tennessee 3-0 for the first time since 2016. When you talked about this schedule and you looked up this season, one thing you talked about is how did you handle the month of September? Tennessee has taken and handled it well to this point. They gutted out a win at Pitt. They handled 2 easy non-conference opponents. The question now, what do you do with the Florida Gators?
We'll see you after that game next week on the Extra Point Show.
Thanks for watching The Extra Point, sponsored by your East Tennessee GMC dealers.